So I'm just going to talk through some tips quickly about the calculator paper and a quick tour of the calculator's key features that are going to be useful for the exams. But the first rule of a calculator paper is to don't be a hero, or to not be a hero. And the second rule is to also not be a hero. And what I mean by that is you should do everything that you possibly can in a calculator. So under the pressure of the exam, you're more likely just to make an error than you would normally in class. So if you would confidently do 7 times 8 in class, I still might type that into the calculator in the exam just to be double sure, and just take your time. The other key thing is anything that you type into the calculator, I would write down on your paper. Okay. So I've got two common models here, so two Casios. They're pretty similar. A few of the buttons appear in slightly different places and so on, but they're pretty similar really. The first thing that I would check is that it's in the right mode, so you want to have the D for degrees. I don't know how well that is showing up for you there, but that should be a D. It might be on R, for example, or something different. And if you're needing to change it, what you need to press is Shift and then Mode, and it will come up with these options. And I would then want to choose degrees. That's what the D is for. And to do that, I would press 3 on this calculator. So that's what I'd do. You might need to kind of check instructions for your particular model if it's slightly different, but you want it to be in degrees. A really useful feature and a common feature that most students are well aware of is the SD button, as I tend to call it. So let's say I've done a calculation, 8 divided by 5, and it just then tells me it's 8/5 here. So to turn that into a decimal, I just press the SD button and I get 1.6. If I press it again, it's back to the fraction. Another useful thing though is that if I press Shift and then the SD button, it will turn that from the improper fraction into a mixed number. So that fraction button is another really useful button. So fractions over here. So let's say I need to type in 3/4. So I type in the 3, I go down, go to 4. So let's say I need to do that. Go across onto the line. I want to do that multiplied by 6/7. So again, I press that fraction button. 6 is my numerator, 7 is the denominator. Go across, press equals. I've got my answer. SD, I can change it into the decimal if I need it. If I needed to type in a mixed number, what I'd do is I'd first press Shift and then that fraction button, and you'll see kind of in the orange, so matching the orange of the shift, I've got the orange here, which is denoting that that's going to be a mixed number. So let's say I need to type in 1.5, so I'm going to type in my 1, go across the numerator of the fraction, 1 for the numerator, 2 for the denominator, and then I've got my 1.5. So again, another really useful button. Powers and roots are useful to know where they are. So let's say I need to do 32 squared, so I can do 32, and then the squared button is just here. So just tap that, press equals, see what to get. I might need to do something cubed, and again, I can do 32 cubed as an example. So 32, the cubed button is up here, so X with the little 3. So 32 cubed, you can do that. But what if I need to do a power that's higher than cubed? Well, we have this button here. So I've got the X, and maybe a bit of the X is missing, but with that little square in the power position. So let's say I need to do 2 to the power of 5. So I'll do 2, press that button, press my 5, I've got the 2 to the power of 5. I can then do my equal, so I've got that. So those are really useful buttons, but then I might need to do things like square roots and cube roots, or more complex roots than that. So the square root button is just here. So let's say I'm going to do the square root of 36. Okay, so square root of 36 is 6. Now do remember, actually, that could be a positive 6 or a negative 6 for the square root of 36. But yeah, that's a really useful button. But I might want to do a cube root. So let's say I need to do the cube root of 64. So cube root, again, is where I've got to press Shift first, and I'm going to use the square root button again. But by pressing Shift, it gives me the cube root option. So the cube root of 64, let's press equals, is 4. If I needed to do a more complex root, I'm going to do, or use this button again, but again press Shift first. So let's say I want to do the 5th root of 32. I can just type that in using that button, and then I get that answer of 2. So I've got that bit there. If I'm doing calculations with circles, it's really important to know where the pi button is. So pi is a button where we need to press shift first. So down at the bottom we've got times 10 to the power of x, which is what we use for standard form. But you can see just above it there, I've got the pi button, but I need to press shift first. So shift, and then that button, it shows up as pi on the line. I can press equals. Again, it will say pi. If I want it to a few decimal places, I can press the SD button. So let's say I need to work out what 12 pi is. So I can just type in 12, press shift, and then the times 10 to the power of x button, equals, it's tell me 12 pi, press SD again. Okay, useful button. If I do want to write something in standard form, I can just use that button as it is. So let's say I want to do 3 times 10 to the power of 5. You can just type it in exactly like that. So 3 times 10 to the power of button 5 straight away, and I can just press the equals and it will tell me what that is. So in that case it is 300,000. So if I wanted to do a small number in standard form, so let's say I might want to do 5 times 10 to the power of negative 2, and here is the button that I would use for negatives. I can just type that in, again press equals. Now it's given me the answer, but this time it's given me as a fraction. If I press SD again, it will tell me what that is as a decimal. Okay, so I've got that button there. If we're doing trigonometry, we will want to be using sine, cosine, tangent, sin, cos and tan. So let's say I'm working out a side length. I might have something like 4 sine 49 degrees. Okay, press that, I can get my side length. If I'm wanting to work out an angle, I'll need to be using the inverse of sine, cosine and tangent. Okay, and to do that again, we're going to press shift to access these functions that are in the orange. So if I press shift and sine, and then let's say I've got 8 over 15. Okay, I'm just going to close bracket and then press equals. It will then give me the angle that I'd need in that particular question. Okay. Final one that I'll probably do for now is if I needed to type in a recurring decimal. So let's say I wanted to work out a recurring decimal as a fraction. You can do that in a calculator fairly easily. So let's say I needed to do 0.3 recurring. So that's 0.3333, so on. So I press the 0 point, and then on this particular calculator, it is above the x squared button. So you can see I've got this square with that dot above it that would use for the recurring notation. So let's press shift and then the x squared button, and that gives me a square to put a number in, but it's got, you can just about see it, that tiny dot above it, which is really useful. So I'm going to put 0.3 recurring. Okay, now I can press equals, and it tells me that's 1/3. Okay, so I've got 0.3 recurring equals 1/3. So they're just some of the useful calculator buttons that I'd want to be familiar with before the calculator papers. So hopefully that's been useful to you, and good luck for the exams.